Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
G'day and welcome to an extra edition of Thrash and Treasure, the torture chamber musical comedy podcast that feels like a month-long swim in Neptune's coldest lakes. And speaking of inept, I'm Aaron, and I'm joined as unusual by a co-host from a different show host. He's our resident quizdom mister, but does he have a clue about metal? Let's find out, because he's Matt, the quizmaster. How's it going? Welcome to the show.
Hey there, how's it going? Yeah, I don't know a lot about metal, but we'll work out what I do know as we go along.
Yep, that's it. Well, you have actually been part of the show for, I think, 2 or 3 episodes now, because while we're waiting to get more of Spencer's reviews, because obviously Broadway's been in the off season, I've been putting in the podcast that you have been hosting for us, Get Popped on Culture.
Yes.
You want to tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a short trivia podcast. You can listen with yourself or with your friends, challenge yourself and your friends to all things about popular culture. So some of the episodes that I've hosted so far have been boy groups, girl groups, musical groups, or horror films. So check that out. Get Popped on Culture at the Puzzle Hub.
And for our musical fans, the next episode coming up is the late and great Stephen Sondheim. So how do you think the listeners are going to go with that one?
Well, I myself have a pretty wide knowledge of the subject, so I did pretty well. So I'm really excited to see how people do with that, how they do with that. There are certainly things I didn't know, so you've done a great job with your research.
Well, let's hope so, because the internet is a very dark place, and you find some very weird stuff that doesn't always end up being true. And what is true is so that you are a professional actor, you are a working actor, which is, well, the podcast was on there anyways, but I thought you were somebody that could maybe use that opportunity. I don't know if that's insulting. I apologize. It was coming from the heart. I promise.
I knew exactly. I'm very aware of the number of credits you need on IMDb to be verified. So thank you. And I mean, I love. I started my career as a Broadway performer. I was touring with Broadway shows in the United States and around Europe. So I'm very excited. I guess I'm sort of a bit of a musical theater nerd. So I'm very excited to be on that half of the Thrash and Treasure.
Yeah. And as a American-born Australian.
I'll try not to sound like an Australian too much. No, because I don't actually sound like a typical Australian.
Or a typical American.
Well, in auditions, people ask me, can you do an Australian accent? I say, yeah, I'm doing one right now. I've been living here for 22 years.
You are now officially the bridge between my shitty little studio and the Great White Way and Hollywood, obviously, or Broadway, I should say.
Yeah, no, I can see how calling it the Great White Way could be problematic.
But it has nothing to do with that. It's to do with the bright lights, especially back in the 20s or 30s when there wasn't giant bright billboards all over Times Square, like, video billboards going off 24 hours a day.
That hadn't even occurred to me until you just said it. And I didn't know that it had to do with the lights. I had no idea why it was the Great White Way. It was just, this big wide street, I guess, Broadway. I went to see Cheetah Rivera in Massachusetts, in Central Mass. She was doing a bit of concerts around, and they had those searchlights, outside the theater. And I was like, "Ooh, this must be where there's a Broadway diva, because there are searchlights going across the city of Worcester, Massachusetts."
God, the last time they got searchlights for me, I drank too much.
Yeah, different kind of searchlight.
Anyways, guess what?
What?
We have our first dancing diva in the studio today. So with a step, kick, feet, kick, let's touch upon the purely sick moves this truly slick dude has fully infused in an epic career that has pounciful from stage to screen, like a cat's, as a performer, director, and choreographer, which has taught him how to succeed in this business with really flying across the Broadway stage, where he landed in Hollywood to hail Caesar and seize no dames, because there is nothing like a dame, except a multi-award-winning dance designer whose delicate and dynamic directions develop dramatic dynamite by the delightfully dreamy dancers this dialed-in dude has drafted to deliver, just like the kids of today's chosen musical. plus 13 women on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Well, there was 14, but Sundays in the park with George, putting on the Ritz for some high infidelity with Tom Jones and the baker's wife, whilst the altar boys have a dogfight with the Bat Boys over My Fair Lady, Little Miss Sunshine, after she went missing during a godspell in the South Pacific before being found adrift in Macau like SpongeBob SquarePants. No wonder she's on the verge of that nervous breakdown. So with the clock tick-tick-ticking till the tick-tick-boom, we shout silence and a huge Aussie happy birthday as we serve up some metal cake, sprinkled with just a schmigadoon, to this Emmy-nominated artiste whose fireplace mantle features a Tony, Outer Critics, Drama Desk, 2 Lucille Lortels, and a partridge in a pear tree, ready for Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. So if you're ready for this jelly, please help me, my girl, the king, and I welcome to the torture chamber as we box step with full metal jazz hands to the sound of his Macarenas for the arabesque of the best. So mash your potatoes and step on the right foot, baby, and twist this way, A, for the incomparable icon, Mr. Christopher Gattelli. Yay, Shantae, you stay.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to the torture chamber.
That was easily the best intro I've ever received. That's amazing. Jeez.
Anyone ever outdoes me, you tell me, and I will sue.
They absolutely will not.
Awesome. Now, do you mind if I call you Chris? Because saying Christopher, I feel like I'm telling you off. It's like would be calling Matt Matthew. I would just feel like your parent. I really would.
Absolutely. It's exactly, that's the thing. My parents call me Christopher when they yell at me. So other than that, it's usually Chris.
Christopher?
Exactly. It goes up at the end. Yeah.
Whereas my parents, when they're telling me off, call me my brother's name or my nephew's name, which is even worse because he's 12. But anyways, that's it. So how are you going?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Perfect.
Yep, pretty good. It's bright and early. Now, it is nice to see you sitting down for a change because obviously you are a choreographer. You're one of Broadway's top, most iconic choreographers working today. So it truly is an honor to have you on here because I haven't been able to dance in a long time without alcohol. And I know Matt is also a former dancer as well. And now he runs marathons, which just makes me tired to think about.
Well, 5Ks.
I can't even do 5 minutes without bloody falling over from tiredness. But anyways, we spoke before the Emmy Awards.
Yes.
Which you were nominated for your first Emmy for Schmigadoon. A shout out to Jonathan X, a friend of the show who's been on twice, who actually directed that ceremony. So I hope if he got you on camera, he got your good angle. Now, did you want to trip the winner over?
No.
No? Oh, bugger. One of these days, someone is going to say yes. One of these days.
You don't want to trip a choreographer, that's for sure. I could get in real trouble.
But you'd hope that if they're good enough, they would like do a somersault and then jump up and do a plie or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll just do a fancy roll out of it. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, it's all on how you finish. It's not how you start. Anyways, we're going to move on to metal. But this week we're going to do punk because we're going to tartan it up with some Scots. Because I chose a classic from my youth, The Exploited's Punk's Not Dead. So before we get into that, Chris, do you have any experience with metal, punk, heavy metal, glam, new metal, thrash metal, death metal?
Definitely not of this quality for sure. I mean,
Yep.
I think it's crossed my path, but definitely not as raw as these guys.
Yeah, awesome. What about you, Matt? Because you're new to the show.
I didn't think I did, but then I listened to this album. I was like, oh, this is, yeah, I am a child of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. Well, born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. So some of this would have crossed through my bedroom or through the radio growing up in central Massachusetts. So there you go.
Yeah, but would you have crossed the street if you saw a punk walking towards you?
Yeah, I probably would have thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome. Now, Chris, if you were a rock star, what would be in your stupidest, most over-the-top, craziest rider?
God, that's a good question. Yeah, some kind of candy sounds good. Kind of like a nonstop supply, just always on hand or at hand.
As we say in Australia, actually, lollies.
Yes.
Lollies.
Now, how long did that take you to get used to, Matt, having to say lollies?
Oh yeah, no, I'm pretty down with the lollies now. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of thought, well, is chocolate a lolly? Because, lollies would be like, I don't know, jelly candies in my imagination.
Chocolate's a confection.
There you go.
But so is candy, I guess, and lollies. And I don't know. I have no idea.
And they say sweets a lot in London.
Oh, yeah. Now I'm going to start getting hungry. But anyways, now, Matt, you reviewed the album this week. So I'll let you take the mic.
Okay. Well, let me just tell you that again, like I did not know that this was actually my jam. And I immediately started tapping my feet and nodding my head from the very first track, Punk's Not Dead. Although the diction was not so good. I had a little bit of a problem with the diction. So I had to listen a bit harder to sort of work out exactly what they were saying. But then once I figured out they were saying Punk's Not Dead, I was able to just sort of chill out and relax and enjoy the music and the words. What I really appreciated too was that we moved quickly on. I like the length of the songs. I don't know, I'm of the Sesame Street generation, so we like short. So that was really great. And I'll tell you, the guitar was really banging on the second, well, on all of the tracks, but it really kicked in for me on the second one. I felt sort of that it became very accessible and like I had heard it before. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a positive or a negative for the band when they hear me say that. Again, that guitar on Cop Cars, track 3, and the drums. Suddenly I sort of did feel like a little bit like I was listening to a bit of a Stephen Trask sort of Hedwig and the Angry Inch sort of thing. So maybe that's why it was familiar to me, because maybe there was things borrowed on that in some of my contemporary musical theater. Yeah, so I love that. And then into track 4, into Free Flight, I suddenly started thinking, well, maybe Chris could choreograph to this album like Twyla Tharp did to Billy Joel's Moving Out.
No, well, it's funny. That's what I mean, we actually have a lot of the same reactions to it. A lot of similar thoughts. But yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, the energy of it was so incredible. And I could see like choreographing it, either like really going for it, like a Twyla kind of thing, and really like just like letting it all loose and like people flying around. But then there's another part of me that's kind of like, sometimes you play the opposite when you're creating, and like, I don't know. So like sometimes I could just also see something done choreographically to this where it's like a little more still, and you kind of like, so it's the surprise of like watching that person on stage, like that's going on inside them, so at any second something could happen choreographically. I don't know, it was really awesome. It was a great album.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much movement in the guitar and in the drums, so like speaking from a choreography point of view. So yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's feelings of sex and violence, which are always exciting, dramatically. Yeah, I mean, I really, and by the end of the track, I was just, really well into all of the guitar and the drums. And then there was some awesome sort of Aerosmith type vocals in track 9. So I was like, I haven't heard that yet. That was a surprise. So yeah, like really, for someone who did not think that I was really that into punk, I was quite excited.
I'm so shocked. Like, what? What show am I on? I honestly didn't expect either of you to like this at all. This is, oh wow. There's no melody here. There is just fuck you society, really. There is hard-hitting lyrics about being on the dole and about abusive police, about anti-racism. There's more C words in this than there was in the Book of Mormon. I'm right now, I think I've broken out in a sweat because what the hell is going on? What reality am I in? This is my jam. Like literally, if you can see my leather jacket here, I was gifted this by an older punk when I was 16 years old.
Oh wow.
It used to have a lot more on it and it's all faded now. And there was a patch, actually, funnily enough, an exploited patch on the back, but I replaced it with a cartoon character a long time ago, which I have tattooed on my arm as well. So there was just lots of beer and going like this at the stage, right? And people at home can't see what I'm doing, but it's literally just like arm in the air with one finger, just pointing over and over again, and like almost headbanging, but not really, more of at the top half of our body, and then slamming into each other. Just going boom, 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 and boom, boom, boom. And we were just 16, 17 years old in pubs listening to live bands. Now, if you think this was thrashy hearing it through speakers, go see a pub band play because it is so loud and obnoxious. I've written a thing about punk because I was expecting to have to defend this album.
Well, Chris, were you listening to the lyrics or were you listening to the music?
First, I listened to the music. Like the music kind of drew me in because it was just the energy of it was unreal. But then because it was on, I was listening on Spotify, the lyrics kind of started popping up automatically. So then I was listening to the lyrics because that was the thing too, because of their accent plus the sound of it all. I couldn't understand the lyrics at first.
Yeah, and neither did Spotify.
Yeah, but then once I started reading the lyrics, I was like, wow. I mean, and it's all still timely, surprisingly enough. But and agreed, like just in terms of length, like stuck to one strong idea and kind of really made that point and drove it home. It was really good.
Although it's funny, Sex and Violence, which doesn't have too many lyrics, goes for 5 minutes. But that rings of AC/DC's I've Got Big Balls, which we did that album with Orphe, and I had never heard that song, but I knew this song. I knew Sex and Violence, so I wonder where the influence came from. Now, yeah, the diction, some of the lyrics on Spotify were literally just question marks or incomprehensible in parentheses. So I don't think Spotify really understood as well. But this is what I talk about of punk all the time. There's not the disco influence here, but there's the cheekiness. For one thing, the political drives. There's 3 lines to Dolky, right? Literally 3 lines, and it's nearly 2 minutes long. 3 lines, and like, take that, Who Run the World Girls. Like, seriously, that's how you write a song that has very, very few lyrics, but still packs a huge punch. Now, I'll still read my defense because what's going on? I just feel the need to defend them. Exploited are icons. They've been around since the 70s. Punk, old school thrash punk like this isn't meant to be melodic. It's in your face, it's obnoxious. Otherwise, we'd wear plain clothes. It's a fuck you to society that neglects its youth whilst putting too much blame on them. It's a bite back. It's not melodic. It's anger. It's political, social, sexual, comedic. It's acidic. They are the social justice warriors. Fuck Twitter, but relatable to anybody who's been kicked down. Punk is only uninviting when all you hear is noise, because that blind, deaf ignorance is what punk is fighting against. The Exploited by name alone rings of that. And in their music, in what is voice and lyrics, you hear that anger, that bitterness, and it's better than 99% of these internet activists with overstocked Twitter accounts. Punk's not dead. Society's soul is. That was my defense. I practiced that like for the past 3 or 4 days, and I didn't even need to do it.
Okay, let's go back. It was completely inaccessible. I couldn't understand anything. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm flawed. That you guys at home, I'm shooketh. I really am. It's been rammed into me that it's just noise. I'm so glad you heard that it's not. It was fun. I don't know how I survived, but it was fun. I know how I survived because leather is tough, even if I'm not. But I did get bashed a couple of times. So that wasn't fun. This is oi punk as well. This is really the difference between new school and old school punk, but this is considered oi. And one of the big audience of oi is skinheads. And I wanted to bring this up because there is a difference between skinheads and what you would call boneheads, which are the Nazis, the racists. Skinheads are anti-fascist, they're anti-racist, they are anarchists, yes, but they don't believe in anarchy as a form of living. Let's live in dystopia. This is about creating a utopia. It's about tearing down that man that is oppressive and all that jazz, in society. When you see someone with a shaved head, I shave my head all the time. I do it out of laziness because who could be bothered? People see skinheads and immediately think that's a Nazi, and that's not the case, because this is a culture that has stemmed from the 60s, that came from youths in the UK, and has absolutely nothing to do with the disgusting boneheads, the fucking assholes. I could say worse words than that, but the Orions, Gash, which are the gay Orion skinheads, they are full on, like you would not believe. And my experience as a teenager, we would have actual Nazis come into the pubs. So us younger kids, we would get ushered out the back door, because they would come in about 11 o'clock once the gigs had started dying down. And yeah, we would get the hell out of there. We were looked after by the older punks really so much because, we were the younger generation coming up. And but then a lot of us had to get jobs and shave our mohawks. I'm flawed. I had so much prepared to defend this. I didn't need to. Did we give it a score, or would you give it a score?
I'd say like 7, 8.
Yeah, cool. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm definitely giving it an 8. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd go back for more.
Wow. Goodness, well, they do have more albums. It looks like punk definitely isn't dead then, and we're gonna go to an ad break. G'day, listeners. Aaron here. We thought we'd better send a spy to Broadway to check out the shows for us. So here for today's review is our Broadway spy, Spencer.
Up next, we have Mike Birbiglia's The Old Man at the Pool at the Vivian Beaumont Theater at Lincoln Center. I have not laughed this hard in a very long time. Mike Birbiglia writes a solo show with highs and lows and comedy and seriousness in a way that I've never seen before. The design for the show is very subtle but very intentional. You have a set by Beowulf Boritt and lighting design by Aaron Kopp, both of which were standouts. Now, the set is made to look like a YMCA pool that's like curved, and it's also used as a screen for the projections by Hannah S. Kim, which were, again, very subtle but poignant. Mike Birbiglia himself, he puts himself out on that stage. It is so incredibly funny and well written, and there's not a single moment when you're not enjoying yourself. The show closes December 30th, and it is for everyone. It is for tourists, purists, everyone, because we all need a laugh, and that's what the show will give you.
All right, you're listening to Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron. That's Quizmaster Matt. And we are joined by choreographer extraordinaire, Chris Gattelli. And I am still, after this ad break, I'm shook as I went out, I screamed into the open space, and I poured a bucket of cold water over me, but I still cannot believe that album went. So we're going to go from the exploited now to the exploited, and we're going to do Newsies. Yeah, so this way I thought we would do Newsies because being born in 85, you would have thought, I'm sitting here in a Beauty and the Beast t-shirt. I have an Aladdin neck pillow right next to me. I have my Captain America pillowcase behind. Clearly, I'm a bit of an Alan Menken fanboy.
Ah.
I had not, sorry, I just had never seen this. I never knew it existed until Rent, the days of Napster, when I was trying to get the Rent albums from like Hungary or Sweden, like the international Rent albums. And so I'd be typing in Santa Fe and I'd see a thing called Newsies and I never knew what it was.
That's amazing.
So that's why I thought we would do it this week. And Matt didn't know it as well.
No, I didn't. I don't really know why. I think it was just, I was in New York, in the 90s into the 2000s. And then, I don't know, I guess I was maybe raising children or something during the time, which doesn't make any sense because, I should not be watching Newsies. But we were more, in a Finding Nemo sort of place, I guess.
Hocus Pocus I grew up with. Nightmare Before Christmas I grew up with. In terms of Disney musicals that, I don't know, Christian Bale was in it. But no, Mr. Menken, I love your work so much. I would not have invited you on this show if I didn't. But I did watch the Pro Shot, which is on Disney Plus. So I've written a review. Are we prepared?
I'm prepared.
Yep. All right. When we first decided to open the Newsies, I knew this wouldn't be a black and white experience. Not like other Disney musicals from that era, Newsies is fresh ink to me, so I pressed play on the Spotify, expecting that iconic Menken flavor of music, but was instead treated to something more air-punchy than the music I've grown up with. Here, the rhythmic, bluesy, soulful numbers are replaced with lingering triumph, boiling away under a hopeful, bright-eyed naivete that seeps from the titular Newsies. But it begs the question, how did this now legendary movie turned Tony Award-winning musical get past me all these years? Lack of Disney Channel aside, I lived at the video shop. I saw every movie and musical I could. I saw The Little Mermaid as a 4-year-old soon-to-be gay kid at the cinema. Yet Newsies is completely that. And I'm conflicted. In part, given my distaste for scaffolding, projections, and, children. But here is this timely, grown-up tale of unions, child labor, exploitation, and poverty being told through the eyes of children. No worse, 28-year-olds playing children, but that would make it oldsies. Yet with that gratifyingly lingering triumph, that earnest, bright-eyed youthfulness shining through Jedi Master Menken's music that still has an underlying darkness to it all, is no doubt what makes these Newsies rock stars to younger fans, as we, even curmudgeonly old me, find ourselves punching the air and cheering on those little brats, pioneers. And whilst the Broadway staging used scaffolding, it also kind of wasn't. It invoked the industrial look of the times of a New York City on the rise, adding to the vibe set by the music. So therefore, it's not scaffolding and it's not lazy, even if it is drab. But those were the times and the prospects of many Newsies, therein highlighting that tinge of darkness to Menken's work, which feels slightly more intricate than the lyrics, which are fittingly accessible to its target audience, which apparently I never got an invite to. 3.5 stars out of 5, because I'd like to see it live. So I quite really enjoyed this. More than I was expecting, but I can be curmudgeonly, especially when it comes to children singing and shouting and running around. But obviously these are sort of older actors playing them. Your choreography is insane, Chris. Oh my godfathers. Goodness me. I have no idea. How many ankles were sprained running around on those sets? Because that was,
I'll be honest, none. We had a pretty healthy company, let's put it that way. No real bad injuries. It was a great collaboration with me and the cast in terms of like what they could do live and 8 shows a week and keep their bodies fit and everything. So we made sure to kind of take care of them in that way too. So yeah, luckily, we knock on wood, there were no real problems.
No one turned into a pretzel by the end of each night?
Well, that may have happened, but that's just a dancer's life in general.
Lots of Advil.
Yes.
That's it. I just don't know how this got by me. I don't. I loved Bugsy Malone.
Mm-hmm.
That was one but they're like shooting each other in that. So anyone who knows me knows I love action films and horror films and stuff like that. Not like children shooting children, but it's like they're splurge guns. They're not, okay, that sounds a bit adult, but they are cream pies. Again, we're going into the wrong territory there. Oh my godfathers. If you haven't seen Bugsy Malone, just go watch it. You'll know what I'm talking about. It's a gangster movie.
Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing I was most surprised about with Newsy was that a burlesque house was in a Disney musical.
But even this story is not a kid's story. This is not a bedtime story you're reading to your kids. And yet kids have loved it for so long.
Yeah.
Did you get that vibe from the audiences, Chris? Well, especially at Paper Mill when it first opened?
I absolutely. I think there's something about the show that kind of sneaks up on you, and that like it's entertaining and the music and everything's great, but at the end of the day, like the story itself is really moving, and I find really inspiring. Even today, if it were out now, just we need it. It's really inspiring to see and to think that it's a true story. These young kids stood up for themselves that way against quote unquote the man. It's something that we all, I think, especially in these times, take for granted, that you do have a vote and you do have a say, and it's important to keep that in the front of your mind and not the back.
Yeah, and it's not all about Twitter.
I love how Pulitzer was like, oh, we're going to raise the price, but, we'll just make them sell more papers, and that's going to teach them a lesson. But it wasn't like a spiteful sort of thing. He was like, oh, I'm actually doing something good for them.
A lot of villains convince themselves that they're doing the right thing. Look at Thanos, and how many people walked away from Avengers Infinity War going, oh, Thanos was right. People thought bloody Hitler was right too, for crying out loud. Goodness gracious me. That's what the villain does, is convinces you that they're right, that they're doing the right thing. Otherwise, they become a mustache twirler. Like, ooh, I'm doing the evil deed.
But I think in the narrative, like, it's not quite clear at the very beginning who the villain is going to be. You know what I mean? And so I found that to be very interesting.
Villain in quotation marks, the antagonist, more to the point, because he's not so much a villain, I guess. I don't know much about the man. Pulitzer, I hardly know her. That's what I'm saying. Every time I would watch it or listen to it, and they'd say Pulitzer, I'd be like, I hardly know her. And then I'd be like, Noah, I hardly know him.
He built the Ark.
Oh yeah, he did too. Okay, I wanted to ask about the audiences, because I think this was one of the shows sort of in the past. I've got a question later about sort of the past decade or so of Broadway and musicals in general. Was this really one of the earlier shows of this century that has had screaming audiences all the way through it? Because I noticed they were quite vocal in that pro shot.
They were, and they were nightly. I think, like you said, how did I miss it back then? It's kind of, I think it came and went pretty quick, and I guess technically was considered a flop.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
But I was around for it, and I definitely loved it, especially being a male dancer and seeing all those guys dancing like that. Like it,
Yeah.
This was obviously before the days of YouTube and stuff, so I didn't even know that there were that many men who danced in my little hometown. So I personally found it inspiring, but I think it just kind of came and went. And I think if you were one of the fansies, if you were one of the fansies of the movie, you knew about this hidden gem. But I also I find that seeing it live on stage was part of its appeal, because the movie is fantastic, but it's like to see it live and to see those performers do that live is something that's really thrilling, because you can edit things and you can take the best shots of things, but when you're watching that kind of talent live every night do that, like in combination with all of the moving parts of the story and all the score and everything, it was another it just made it really thrilling to see that that's happening right in front of you.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a problem on this show with vocal audiences, because I'm trying to listen to what's going on the stage, and all I can hear is people screaming next to me because they've seen it 10 times already. But that's me being a bitch. So I'll own that. Wicked, massively popular, but doesn't really have people screaming all the way through it. They're quite quiet, which I appreciate. Now, Matt, how did you go with this? I'm trying to find a pen that's not a clicky pen, because I'm banned from clicky pens on the show, because all I do is sit here and click them.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, Chris, the energy of the dance ensemble is just incredible. Like, the dance is such an incredible part of the performance. But we talk about like the audience response. I mean, how could you not, at the end of those first numbers, with all the dancing and the athleticism, just the excitement of the athleticism, not want to be a part of it? And I think that's where those cheers come from.
I agree. You end up, I said this, it's an interesting thing that there was like this kind of like parallel story going on at the same time, that you're watching a story about these young kids who are trying to fight and pave a way for them to just have a fair seat at the table. And at the same time, when you're let's just say on Broadway, you're watching these young boys, who had it was most of their Broadway debut, you're watching them kind of do the same thing in real time. Like, they're growing up in front of you, making a seat at the table for themselves in this community. So it was this really beautiful kind of parallel thing happening in real time. And that's why I think the cheers were from their kind of incredible performances. They were, well, we've always gotten lucky with the talent, but every Newsie that's come through, they're very unique and special.
And there's certainly memorable people from that original cast, Jeremy Jordan and Andrew Keenan Bolger. And, it's just, and again, it's funny you said Annie earlier, Aaron, because that does have that same sort of fight and spirit as Annie. And so maybe that's something that the audiences are responding to too, because it's something that's familiar from another generation.
Yeah, I actually have a theory about Annie, that Oliver Warbucks is actually Oliver Twist. And he grew up, and then he helped an orphan, just like he was when he was.
That's a nice one.
It's a really sweet tale.
Well, there is that rap battle between Anne and the Newsies at one of the Easter bonnets.
Oh, wow.
A few years back.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it's been to Australia yet. It hasn't been professionally, that's for certain.
We wish. I love Australia.
Yes, we'll bring it. Now, was there Foley put into that pro shot? That's what I would like to know, because the scene where I can't remember the character's name with the crutches, Andrew Keenan Bolger's character. Crutchy, yeah, when he gets whacked with the crutches, that was Foley. There was no way in hell that sound that I heard when he was getting hit, that was definitely Foley, which I thought was funny and cute, because you don't usually see that in theater. But yeah, unless there was, someone tapping themselves or something like that, but it really did sound like Foley.
It might have been.
Yeah.
Because the way we shot it, we did a week of isolated shots with them to make sure that we had everything. We were able to get the cameras on stage and around them, which was awesome. And then we did the one live performance where we captured the actual house. So that was it was a really cool process.
Yeah. I'm not criticizing, I noticed it, that's all.
As the choreographer, did you have much say in like the camera direction, the dance direction of that pro shot?
There were some moments that I gave my opinions of just like, this would be great to get from here, or this, I'd really love to get this from the front because of the picture or whatever. But I have to say, they covered so much of it well. I think they did a great job with it in terms of just experiencing it. Like, it made you feel like you're in the theater watching it, but yet at the same time really brought you into it. So yeah, it was better than I thought it was going to be honest. They did great.
Yeah, I think the only issue I really had is with projections. I want to see beautiful paintings, not projections, people. But that's me. That's my beef with theater, and I know it saves money and all that jazz. I get it. I totally get it. But I don't think lights pop like a painting does. But I don't know. That's just me. Otherwise, like, the set I thought was actually really effective. And I've ranted a lot on this show about scaffolding because it's typically just stomp, stomp, stomp. It's scaffolding for the sake of being cheap and edgy, but that's not what was happening here. And it was very intricate. There was moving parts. The sets were moving around. I swear to God, someone had to have gotten crushed or their foot twisted or something, but apparently not. So that's a miracle, in my opinion, because it was quite full on. That said, during technical rehearsals, how tired did you get working with that set?
To be honest, it wasn't as bad because we did a lot of it without the cast, and we went in with a lot of the ideas going in. So as we were rehearsing it, we had a pretty good idea, and made sure everything was super safe. Because, man, once those things are huge, those towers. So once they were on the move, it's like it took a lot to stop them. So it was a kind of, yeah, planned pretty much well in advance.
Are those in your show Bible? As for your dance captains, like are the sets a different another dancer in sort of the show Bible?
Oh, totally. I mean, it's part of definitely how they move and which direction, and that's why, because like you were mentioning about the projections, like, because sometimes they'd stay open, sometimes certain boxes would be closed off. So there's a lot of that because we'd have to hide certain performers behind the panel. So it was a lot of math, but which actually I love, to be honest. So it was a lot of math figuring all that out, kind of like a Rubik's cube, but it was really fun at the same time. So, but I was gonna say, I think they're saving it hopefully for a run in Australia.
I have to put that on a big ship, I tell you that. Because every time I say scaffolding, the first thing, it's my eye twitches because I've just had some bad experiences with it. But again, as I say, it wasn't scaffolding; it was the industrial look of a building being built. It worked.
It's like that old picture of the guys sitting on the on the beam with the hats on.
Oh yeah, the beam.
Having their sandwich or whatever.
Yes, which they used for the Friends promo shoot. It's totally random fact from like 1995. Yeah, I would love to see it live. To be honest, I would like to see a different setting because whilst I loved what I saw, now I've seen that. Mm-hmm. That's the one problem with pro shots is as much as I love to get to see what they're seeing on Broadway, it's like it comes to Australia and it's $200 a ticket. And I'm like, well, I have kind of already seen it 20 times, so I don't typically go and see it.
Yep, this is true.
Yeah, so I would like an aesthetic change, if anything, but that's just me being picky, really. But I am here to be critical. So yeah, no, I gave it 3.5 stars as an album, but I think live it would definitely be a 4 because, as I say, your choreography, the performers, and the story itself, the feeling you get from it, the feeling of a spring in your step afterwards that you can achieve anything, which I know we get that in really every Disney film, don't we? But yeah, no, I would say this definitely. So please, Disney, you're bringing Beauty and the Beast back. Bring us Newsies, actually, and also Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
That'd make me very happy.
And Aida.
And Aida. Jesus Christ, we miss out on everything. We didn't get Tarzan. We haven't had The Little Mermaid professionally either. So, anyways, it looks like the Newsies have been read to filth. So we're gonna seize an ad break. G'day listeners, Aaron here. While you're topping up your coffees, did you know that you can support our show and go on a fantastically scary adventure at the same time? Go to www.thetonistonTales.com/bookstore to grab your copy of The Toniston Tales, a darkly funny Aussie trilogy about a young boy who rescues injured animals in his spare time and the roller coaster ride he's taken on by a literal fish out of water. Written by me, the village idiot of Thrash and Treasure, you'll come to love Toniston Turnbull and the dozens of wacky characters that he meets along the way. And here is a sneak peek. After barely 3 hours of light sleep, Toniston Turnbull slowly opens his eyes, his body feeling heavier than it ever has before. Not from extra weight, from tiredness and stress. Polly sighs in the shadows behind him, the flame of the nearest barbed wire tiki torch tower having died down, but not out, while Toniston napped. "Are you awake?" Toniston whispers. "Oh, how can I sleep in this place?" Polly moans, turning onto her side and facing Toniston, who stays on his back, imagining obscure animal-esque shapes in the rusted tin roof above them, shadows faintly formed by the nearest dying torches. "We need to work out a way to get out of here," Toniston states the obvious. He whispers, despite the fact the nearest shacks to their own are several meters away, and the occupants presumably asleep, as most prisoners seem to be. "How? There's no fence to squeeze through, or even climb," Polly replies, sitting up in bed and then stretching out her sore arms. The hairs stand on end from the slight chill in the air. "I don't know, but I think the whole fighting thing is a distraction." "You mean to distract the other prisoners when new ones arrive?" "No, I think that was just bad timing. Didn't you notice?" Toniston goes on to explain his theory. "That fight happened, everybody gathered around. I didn't see one person who wasn't watching, and then when I vomited, the only gate in this place closed shut." "What are you trying to say?" "I think something happened when everyone's back was turned." "Like what?" whispers Polly, her voice breaking up in fear. "I don't know. That's what we've got to find out." Toniston's brain starts working overtime. "But it's strange that nobody seems to want to leave. They seem almost happy. Definitely content. So, when's the next one of those stupid beatdowns?" Toniston can't help but think Polly looks tough, almost evil in the shadows as she asks. "I don't know," Toniston begins. But both teenagers are distracted by a crumbling noise in the distance. Hopping out of bed, Toniston joins Polly on her own, equally uncomfortable one, spotting a large, white package hovering close to the cave ceiling, behind it a shadowy figure. The package is lowered down, causing the teenagers themselves to lower as well, hoping not to be spotted by whom or what may be operating this obscure crane. Over a long, slow descent, the package is dropped to the ground. Polly keeps her eyes on it, but Toniston looks up immediately, spotting a large black shadow scurry away to God only knows where. "Come," he whispers, as he quietly hops off her bed, slipping into his docks with bare feet. Polly follows his lead. Careful to keep watch on all directions, the teenagers swiftly sneak over to the white package, their hearts beating an almost tribal jam in perfect harmony, and stopping in their tracks as the sudden realization of what lies before them sinks in. A woman, seemingly in her early 20s, wrapped up in bandages from the neck down. No, not bandages. "Is that spiderweb?" Polly asks, completely mortified at the prospect. Grab your copy of the Toniston Tales from thetonistonTales.com/bookstore today. Hooroo! Alrighty, you're listening to Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Matt, and we are joined by the incredible dancing man, Chris Gattelli. In terms of choreographers, is that a competitive field as much as acting is? Because there's like one, maybe two choreographers to 20 cast members, so the jobs are a lot less. Does it get competitive?
If it is, it doesn't feel that way. I think because theater is a lot less accessible than like just popping on something on TV. So I think especially in the theater, we're all just kind of rooting for each other to do well, just so that we keep making more of it and we get more opportunities and give people opportunities. So yeah.
Artists need to support artists more, I think, because nowadays our enemy is, well, not our enemy, but our competition isn't each other. Our competition is the Real Housewives and Kardashians and people like that, people without talent.
Oh, I agree. I'm waiting for this phase to be over. And it doesn't.
Yeah.
It keeps not being over. I keep saying like people actually are trained to do this. They're trained to, put on shows and, act and sing and dance and perform. And it's the reality thing I'm pretty good with. I'm pretty pretty filled up.
Yeah, and look, I look at Australian TV and it's all reality. And it's a sad fact that now two actors going to audition aren't competing against each other. Two actors are going to audition, thankful that job exists to begin with.
Agree.
And that's a really sad state to be in.
Agree.
I'm so vocal in support of artists. I really am, because I am one myself and the opportunities just aren't there. Now, Schmigadoon season 2 is coming. Is it true this season will be subtitled Oh Schmigcutter? And will there be lots of naked boys schmigging?
I mean, that's one way it could have gone, but it didn't go that way.
What? The rumors are false, and I did not at all start them.
You could make a suggestion.
It's too late to go back. Although, could always edit something in. No, you're hitting the right time period, but we didn't. I don't want to give spoiler, but I guess in some way we hit Calcutta, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, is it Schmeh? Schmippen?
That could all possibly be in there. It's the 60s and 70s, early 80s.
I still haven't seen the last 2 episodes or 3 episodes because when I realized that this was about them falling in love, I'm single, so I'm like, oh, and I can't watch romance because it just makes me sad. But anyways, what makes you unwittingly give a standing ovation? So what makes you just naturally jump out of your seat?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I think I'm one of those people that I feel the standing ovation is a little too common. I mean, I get it, but I usually stand if it's someone like out of respect, like if someone's been at their craft a while and they're on stage and they come with this breadth of work and it's kind of something to kind of acknowledge that they're still a part of the community or whatnot. But I feel like the standing ovation is has become a bit normalized in a way. It's different in London when I worked there. It's like the audiences in London, they'll stand if they really deserve it. People on teams over there are like, wow, they really like this one because they're standing, which is so odd because coming from the States, it just happens all the time. Yeah, so I will if it's, I guess, yeah, like that, like if it's really, really deserved.
Yeah, which has been sort of very much my running narrative on this show. Sit the hell down, people, unless you are just so compelled to get up. And I've said it many episodes that we're in this phase of, yay, we're happy, we're out of the house. I get it, you're excited, you're going to give standing ovations, but I saw the way everybody stood up and it felt really regimented. It didn't feel excited. It felt like, oh, this is the part where we stand up and we clap very politely standing up. And looking like a fool giving a standing ovation to Mamma Mia because they told me to on the stage. Sorry, Matt, I know you're offended by that.
How could you?
We were talking about that before, and Matt said that at the end of the show, they tell you to stand up, and I'm like, no.
Well, I did. When I was in, I was like, get up, stand, dance along with us.
Oh, yeah, no, see, no, that's a daggy parent thing. No,
There was a time in New York where especially when the ticket prices started going up, where I think people were standing up just so that they could be like, yeah, look at me, I paid the price for these tickets.
I got my money's worth. Yeah, I totally get that, but no.
You hear about these mid show standing ovations. I mean, I think maybe Casey Donovan might have got one of those in 9 to 5 in Australia. Just because it was such a powerhouse for the performance. I mean, you do hear about these every once in a while.
Because she deserves every one she gets. That's why she is a powerhouse. I am so team Casey Donovan. It's not funny, and it was nearly 20 years ago that she won Australian Idol. Anyways, I'm going to move on. Speaking of teen idols, which posters were on your wall as a kid?
Oh my God, I was so into Star Wars when I was young.
Oh, nerd.
Yeah, I was total nerd. Yeah, Star Wars. And I was actually a huge comic book fan when I was young. So I went to comic conventions and had artists, drawing superheroes and stuff like that. So that's kind of what was on my walls when I was young.
Cool.
Wow. Did you ever get to work with any of the actors from Star Wars in any sort of capacity as a Broadway choreographer? I mean, was Carrie Fisher doing anything with you, or?
I actually did something. I did a project with Carrie. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I literally lost my mind. Yeah, I was beside myself.
I think I might have had Carrie Fisher on my wall. Probably the Carrie Fisher, with the 2 buns from, in the long white dress. But then, of course, Carrie Fisher in Jabba the Hutt's, area as well.
in the bikini.
So yeah, I was a bit of a Star Wars fan too.
That is totally sexist. Anyways, no, it was. I'm not one that.
She was a strong, empowered woman. This is why we like that character.
She was a captain or a general, wasn't she? Yeah, General Organa. Anyways, what is your personal industry pet peeve? Not a social justice thing, not something we hear about. What's your personal industry pet peeve?
I think it's the amount of time spent on Instagram and stuff like that. I don't know, growing up in an era where we didn't have all this and like all you did was go to class, you know, to like hone in your craft. And I see this generation like spend so much time videotaping themselves and doing these photo shoots. So I usually, when I do these master classes and stuff, I usually say like, you know, all the time that you took finding that photographer and getting that outfit and going to the park and climbing that tree and getting shots done in the tree with, you know, it's like that time could have been spent getting better at your art so that when you come in for us to audition, like you're prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my, you know, my biggest pet peeve. And
Amen. I never knew it was so easy to get an acting job than to film yourself doing a little comedy sketch and putting it on Twitter and getting a couple of thousand viewers and saying, hey, I'm an actor, give me a job. Like, really? Is that where the industry has gotten to now, that people just need to take a few photos or videos, post it online and say, I'm a thing?
that goes back to our reality TV conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's like that's why I think that whole idea of it gets normalized. Like someone does a TikTok video and all of a sudden it's like, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
So
I see it all the time. I saw someone just before said, any stage manager gigs. I'm like, is it really that easy to just tweet out that you want a job? Because please, people, give me a freaking job. You hear the introductions I write.
Exactly.
Goodness me, why? Drag Race. Why the fuck have you not emailed me and said, Aaron, you've got a little bit of talent here, kid? Because it's not that easy as to just post yourself online and get a gig like that. I was about to say, Andy Warhol said that in the future, everybody will have their 15 minutes of fame. Now we can quote him on that, or we can blame him for putting the idea in our heads. And that's why we're in the mess we're in now. Because everyone's thought, oh, well, Andy Warhol said it. It must come true. Well, I also should get $1 million. No, it's not happening, is it? Anyways.
Do people pull out their cell phones in rehearsal rooms like that you run?
Oh, that's another one. It depends on the level of, like, if, like, for example, I just did a workshop of a new project and they do, and for that I go, okay, they're not getting paid as much. They're not in it, you know, doing a run. But I have been known to put shoe holders on the doors of rehearsals and people put their cell phones in before they come into rehearsal, for sure.
Good. You're there to work. You're there to be a team. You're not there to promote yourself. That's the problem. It's gotten down to the promotion of self, not the arts. You know, well, that's what I see anyways. But as we've established, I am a curmudgeon and a bitch. So I will obviously have opinions like this. All right. Anyways, we'll move on. What has been your worst injury from dancing?
Oh gosh, I was actually, when I was performing in Cats, I landed out of a jump wrong and hurt my lower back, my discs. I herniated 2 of my discs. I was out for a bit. Yeah, did not feel good for sure. But but with enough.
Did you finish the show?
No, I never did that. There was a term called early release, or ER, from your show, and I was like, I can't imagine ever getting through a show that you'd have to like leave midway unless you're really, really sick or something. And then a few months later, totally happened, and I was like, oh, I get it now. I get why. You know, that's like a thing. And yeah, I definitely had to leave.
Were you out for a long time?
It was like a couple months.
Wow.
Yeah, I did good physical therapy and do all of that.
Yeah, any damage to the spine is just, it's awful. All right, sorry to damper the situation. Have you been asked that before in an interview?
No, actually. Mm-mm.
Yes. All right, because I don't like to ask questions that other people have asked, and I was worried that you may have been asked that. Matt, I know you have a question that you wanted to ask.
I do. It sort of goes back to, you know, what we were talking about with, you know, pulling out your cell phone in the middle of the rehearsal room. Like back in the day when I was dancing, you know, back when I was young, back in the 1990s in New York, we would learn all of our choreography from the choreographers or from the dancers that had learned it from the original choreographer. And so, I mean, Chris, with your work, I mean, it's looking specifically at Newsies, like there is a pro shot sort of version of Newsies. Do you find that people borrow your choreography without permission? And where do you draw the line on, on seeing somebody's choreography and then recreating it?
That's such a great question. And it's where, well, I'm actually I'm one of the co-chairs of the choreographer board in our union, and we're dealing with that. It's like an ongoing daily discussion, and which actually gets harder the more platforms are invented. Like we just had a big conversation about TikTok, about like people then like would post something from like since we're talking about like Newsies, for example, and they do it, but they don't give the choreographer credit, the original choreographer. So it's like we're trying to figure out ways of, not that we don't want people to do it, because that's what's so great is like I mean personally at least, my feeling is like I love that people do it and they would want to do it. I think it's a lovely compliment. But it's just the degree at which kind of like you're credited or not credited and when and where and all that stuff. It's a constant conversation. But I've definitely, like, even when I've had to choreograph certain things, like when I did The King and I, there was with the Jerome Robbins estate, there were certain shows of his that you have to go through as lawyers to get permission to do. So like King and I was one of them where we had to get permission to do his choreography, but we did it at Lincoln Center and the stage was a thrust and not proscenium. So it had to change a bit because of just the nature of the dynamics of the theater. So we had to get a special kind of agreement with them. So it was like partly his choreography and partly mine, because I had to kind of take what he did and reshape it and choreograph other moments to like look like it was all in the same kind of style and vocabulary, which was I found a really great challenge and was exciting just to kind of share that with him. But yeah, it's kind of all over the map right now in terms of that. It's interesting. It's an ongoing conversation for sure.
I think it boils down to another thing I keep bringing up: fan ownership. You what was I looking at? I was on Spotify the other day and I'd seen an album that was I think it was the Jurassic Park score, completely recorded by somebody else who's trying to make themselves famous. We see it on YouTube all the time. We see writers will rewrite someone else's story. Like someone really loves Harry Potter, so they'll rewrite the first book in their voice. It's not okay. It's not okay to take someone's image, put it on a t-shirt and sell it for $40 on your Etsy store. You don't own the art you love. You don't own the artists you love. And I think that's where it boils down to, is that fans feel like, because it's such a big part of their life and it gives them validation and it gives them comfort and has gotten them through the hard times, that they then allowed to do what they want with it. And it's like I said to Matt the other day, why do we know the names of people who play video games, but we don't know the names of the artists who designed them or wrote them or even are acting in them half the time? Because fans step up and they're like, well, I play video games 24 hours a day and now give me money. I sort of feel like the internet has ruined why I wanted to get into the industry in the first place, to be honest. Fans have taken all this stuff, and look at what happened with J.K. Rowling. Suddenly fans were burning their books because the thing that they loved so much had let them down. That's the opposite side of this, of the ownership thing, that something they've invested so much in will let them down so much that they have to erase it out of their lives. It comes even the same when you have, these fans go to a $200 Broadway musical and they're sitting there screaming all the way through it and singing along because they own it. Me sitting next to them.
Singing along, that happens.
That's, or the filming it as well. And people want to turn around and blame Lilius White for what happened. The person who it happened to said that the enemy is ableism. As a disabled person, no, it's not. The enemy here is people who go to a theater and sit there and film. Because Lilius White wasn't looking at that person. And the first thing in her head was, oh, this person must be hearing impaired. because what we so commonly see are people sitting there with their phones filming it. So that is the enemy, because that was the first thing they saw. It's like I said before, when you see a skinhead, the first thing people will immediately think is a Nazi racist, because that's what we're used to. They take over. And I did not pay $200 to hear you sing, quite frankly. But it leads into my next question, because in the past decade or so, we have seen a spike in theatre as binge viewing. You know, a show will come out and it'll be on for maybe 3 months or something, or 2 months off Broadway or whatever. And people will go see it in the first week or whatever, and they love it so much and they'll buy 20 tickets and they keep going back. Movies are set, TV shows are set, but live theatre is vulnerable. Not every performance will be the same. Would you agree that, whilst I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but would you say that theatre wasn't really designed for this type of binge viewing? Because what's happening is someone will go see, say, I don't know, Wicked 10 times in a year. And every time they do, they'll get on stage, well, she wasn't as good tonight. Oh, her voice cracked during this number. She was better last time. I don't think we're meant to be comparing. I think you're meant to take a performance as that performance.
I agree with you in that, you know, like, especially if it's for example, like Wicked, like if it's a long running show and different people play certain roles. And like, of course, every single person is different and everyone is going to bring something special to the show. But then it's like, oh, well, they didn't hit that note like so-and-so did, or this one did. And it's like, sometimes that's not always the point.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what it's for. That's, you know, we're just there as creators and performers. We're there to tell a story and give, you know, entertain and educate and all that kind of good stuff. And so when it gets down to that, it's like, well, then why are you really going to see it? You know,
with that validation, that ownership,
Yeah.
that feeling that it gives them. And I think there's cheaper hobbies,
yes.
you know, to be honest. There are cheaper hobbies out there. Like, so I'm not, kids out there to do this, I promise I'm not judging you. I find it fascinating. I find it kind of weird, because like I've seen the same show over and over again when I was an usher, and it was a production of South Pacific, but I was ushering. It wasn't I saw it the first time and I had to go, you know, see it 10 more times after that. I was literally helping my local theatre company. But it puts the cast, I think, under a much higher scrutiny than they already are, because ticket prices puts you under scrutiny already, because we want our money's worth, full stop, you know. But then to see it over and over again, you're scrutinizing them based on the last performance and the performance before that. That's not fair.
I had something to ask you that's somewhat related about, you know, making a show fresh and new every night. Because with the My Fair Lady that you did for Julie Andrews, and I mean, certainly when I saw South Pacific, there were things that were different in every performance from the ensemble. Do you work within a sort of structured improvisation sort of framework, or how do you get your dancers to keep things fresh and to make it a different show every night?
I usually do kind of exactly what you're saying. I mean, there's definitely structure, but then usually there's enough in there that it's like this is where you have to get to, but as long as they know the you know, who their character is and what they would do and everyone's safe, I usually leave it open just enough so that they can have a little fun and mix things up, you know, every now and then on stage, just so that it keeps it fresh for them, and it keeps them thinking and on their toes, and it keeps their castmates on their toes, because someone's going to like not look at you tonight and look at you the next day, or grab you into a dance one night. And I personally feel that is it's helpful to them. Like when I was a performer, that's why I mean, I did Cats for like 5 years total, but I think I lasted that long because it was different every night. Like there was, you know, the ball was the ball, but then like all of the rest of the show was a lot of us improvising and kind of crawling where you want, as long as you knew you were safe. So, and I appreciated that. I appreciated kind of getting to be creative and like not do what I want, but just like do my part to make it fun and fresh. And so I think it helps for sure.
That's a warmth, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate it to Wicked, because I love the music in that show, but when I saw it, I didn't feel a warmth, because it felt very structured and very set in stone. It didn't feel like there was any loose movement or any sort of I didn't feel like the cast were breaking out of the shells of what they were told to do, basically, which is probably a horrible thing to say about this super talented cast that were amazing. And it may just be my problem because I apparently am the only person that got this vibe from it, but I didn't feel that looseness or that warmth that you would get from that, from being able to go from A to B in character with a bit of improv, a natural flow from what is set dance moves. Because I don't know, it's not just me, but you compare that to something like Book of Mormon, where it's a comedy, I guess, so it's and there wasn't as much dancing in it, obviously, but it didn't feel as regimented, if you will, that word again.
Mm-hmm.
Theater shouldn't be regimental.
Well, SpongeBob certainly felt free and loose. I mean, aside from the tap dance number.
Well, see, that's a good example of kind of like structure and not structure, because there were some numbers that absolutely had to be like letter perfect. Like the tap, they had to be like really clean, and like especially the glow in the dark number, Simple Sponge, like that had to be meticulous because they were hitting all those shapes in the dark, and you don't want someone to step over someone or on someone or hit someone. So that was actually like very specific in a way that was just drilled and drilled and drilled. But then there are other moments in that show where it was absolutely a free for all, like the opening, and like that was there was structure, but it was like that was it was just organized chaos, but in the best way, and so it feels warm and inviting, and they got to do whatever they want and have fun and be themselves. And so that show is actually a perfect example of kind of like when and where to be. I think that's it. Tina really helped like sculpt the whole show that way, so that it was very precise when it needed to be for comedy, because that has to be specific, but then also very loose when it had to be loose. So that's a good one.
SpongeBob was so cool.
That's another one you need to bring to Australia.
Yes. Oh my God, please. I would love that.
Isn't it like set off the coast of Australia?
Yeah.
Bring SpongeBob to Australia already, for crying out loud. Goodness me.
Going back to and the Foley. Have you seen just all the noise in that opening number? So funny.
I haven't seen it yet because I want to. That's the type of show I would want to see live.
Yeah.
So I haven't yet watched it. Like if we do it on this show, I'm gonna have to watch it, obviously. Sometimes like there'll be a musical that will come out and I'll hear the album, but then that's it. I won't look at any footage or anything like that beyond maybe the Tony Awards performance, because I want to see it live. Hairspray was very much like that, but before we got it on stage in Australia, we got the movie. So don't do that with SpongeBob, please. Anyways, you have been an absolute amazing guest. Thank you for joining us and laughing at all my jokes, because that always makes me feel very validated. I never know with guests like what someone's sense of humor is.
Well, maybe from some other shows you might have an idea.
Yeah, that's why I apologize beforehand, just in case. It's not that I plan on saying anything shitty, it's just I just happen to sometimes, because foot and mouth disease is a thing. But anyways, where can people find you on the social medias?
At CGATTELLI, anywhere really. Nothing too fancy.
Nothing too fancy, and I'm guessing you're not posting videos of yourself doing little performances to get a job.
No, although I'm so people would say I don't need to, but
No.
anyway.
Oh God, no. After this career, Jesus Christ. And it's still like you're in your prime and the future, goodness gracious me. So don't forget little old us.
No way. It's such a pleasure meeting you guys. Oh my God. This was a blast.
Thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Anytime you want to join us again, we'd love to have that. You are our first choreographer. We've had a Muppets director on this show before we got a Broadway choreographer. What?
Yeah, you guys have great questions.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's actually Matt's first episode.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's it from us. You take care, and we shall see you next time. Hooroo! Awesome.
You guys are great.
That's fantastic.
Like quicksand!